Are you ready?
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
great. So hi there and welcome back to Harvest Development Group's Do Good Better live streams. Today we're very fortunate to have Dana Litwin, who is going to be talking about adopting volunteer engagement and programs to crisis, COVID-19 and beyond. Dana is a strategic advisor, transformational coach with a background in team building and environmental conservation. She comes from us from California, and she's one of the founders of the National Alliance for Volunteer Engagement. Her website, if you'd like more information, is www.danalitwinconsulting.com. And again, we're very fortunate to have Dana and looking forward to this conversation. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Scott. I'm really glad to join Harvest Group's sessions. And again, hoping to have this go live and have some conversation, having a couple of gremlins this morning, but absolutely this recording I think is going to be valuable for everyone's tight schedule. So the main point that I want to invite everyone to understand is to have grace right now and really practice grace and patience. We're all in a panic mode. There's a recent statistic, volunteermatch.org, which has some great resources. I'll list a few different websites that those of us kind of high up in the sector, consultants and companies and organizations, including the National Alliance for Volunteer Engagement, are steering people towards a couple of one-stop shoppings for resources. But Volunteer Match did a survey within the last couple of weeks that 93% of all volunteer activities are suspended or canceled or postponed indefinitely. Kind of all mean the same result right now. And that's huge. That's essentially, 93% of a sector is shut down right now. And those who are paid staff, leaders of volunteers who manage programs and agencies or direct volunteer services and agencies or organizations are either not doing much, or they're trying to work remotely, or they're worried that they're going to get furloughed or fired. So there's really so much anxiety right now, as we know. And there are some great nuts and bolts of shifting your agency and your program to adapt to this that I want to cover today. And I want to just, again, touch upon that kind of emotional and mental stress element that we're all under, that are going a little stir crazy, being cooped up inside. I'm in San Francisco, and we very successfully have been sheltering in place since February, and that's great. It's having a great result. And everyone's going a little bit batty, and my cat might join in on this conversation at any time. So I want to talk about a core foundation that I run in my consulting for volunteer engagement or volunteer program design, which are the 3 C's, like the letter C in sign language, of happy volunteers. So we want to think about comfort, convenience, and connection. And if you're thinking about the comfort, convenience, and connection of any of your team members, paid or unpaid, full-time, part-time, it's an entire team. We don't want to separate out volunteers from staff in this. We really need to think of the entire team working together towards the agency mission. If you are able to let your volunteers know that you're thinking about those 3 things, you're keeping that in consideration, even as you suspend programs or communicate with them or have to adapt to some form of virtual volunteering, then that goes a really long way to keeping that trust. So what's happening right now is we've lost a lot of trust in institutions to look out for us, and that loss of trust in kind of these larger systems, our healthcare system, local or regional or national leadership in response to this. There's so much uncertainty and insecurity around these issues that I want to warn any executive directors or general managers, leaders, to not make any short-sighted decisions. You really still want to think about the long-term strategy of how your unpaid team members, your volunteer talent pool, and all of those programs add to the capacity of the mission of your agency. And there's often a mistake in leadership. It's a pretty bad mistake to, oh, these people are free. Volunteers aren't free. None of these resources are free. It takes investment in the program, it takes resources, and when resources are tight, it feels like an easy solution to cut those programs away, or cut down the staff, or furlough those staff and suspend it, especially when people in areas like California and many other states right now have a health order to shelter in place and not go out and do so many things. So really having that long-term vision is more important than ever, because, you know, COVID-19, the pandemic, this is something that we, on some levels, we knew could occur nationally. You know, pandemics come and go, illnesses come and go. We've seen SARS and swine flu and things before. And there's also always going to be something around the corner that takes us by surprise, that puts an agency or a program or all of us or society into crisis. So right now it's important to be very, very adaptable. Again, that sense of grace, and thinking about how can we support the comfort, the convenience, and the connection of all of our team members to the agency mission and keep the mission moving forward. So some nuts and bolts ways to do that are to shift as many roles as possible, of course, to virtual volunteering. And there's a great book by Jane Cravens and Susan Ellis called The Virtual Volunteering Book, and it's on energizeinc.com. And Energize Inc. is also serving as a great all-around resource center. Articles, books, resources. When webinars and live streams like this, I told them this was occurring today. So this is a resource that's available, that they'll point to your website to get to. And we are often, I'm seeing with clients that there's this challenge with, well, we've never had virtual volunteering before, or we're very client-faced, like we're delivering food, or we're delivering respite services for homebound elders or kids at risk, or whatever the case may be that's very front-facing. Those might need to pause or be drastically adjusted with people being at least, we know it's actually more than 6 feet now, at least 10 feet apart, with masks and safety supplies and you know, basic comfort and safety measures in place by the agency. And this is a time to get really creative. So what else can be done? What can be done virtually or remotely that takes something off of another team member's plate, that is research or a pro bono new level of expertise, and perhaps media management, marketing, IT support for all this extra bandwidth, data entry. There's a lot of things that take time day to day, or that people in the paid staff of particularly small nonprofits or agencies may not have that expertise. And that's a way to engage new volunteers and kind of adapt these new roles to, we can still support the mission of the agency, even if we have to take away or suspend a lot of our in-person services, if that's the kind of mission that the agency is serving. There's still ways to move forward and keep volunteers engaged. And I like to develop with clients and agencies I've been with what I call special project volunteers. And that's a great umbrella term. And open up the dialogue for all of your team members, paid, unpaid, full-time, part-time, to suggest things for them, for the volunteers to do, for the unpaid team members to do. And open up that dialogue and have more of that communication around, oh, I am a database expert, and I noticed that your email communications are looking sloppy, or the code is coming out funny, or the format's coming out funny. I can help you with that. I can redesign that for you. Everyone, again, there's people who are fortunate enough and privileged enough to have a home to shelter in, and maybe different skills than what they've been applying at an animal shelter or a food bank or you know, a respite services. And I'm using those because those are some of the ones that are hit the hardest right now are kind of human services and animal services and food insecurity are seeing, everyone's got this 93% drop off, but those are the ones where like, ooh, these are in-person things. How do we fix that when people aren't physically allowed to be here? And giving some of your talent pool something else to do that's still connected to the mission is going to carry that engagement through this. We also want to be able to adapt financially. And fortunately, philanthropy is really stepping up with extra grants and streamlining grants. And we're also seeing, you know, some federal or state or local nonprofit or small business financial loans or grants or assistance programs that are being fast-tracked. I'm seeing a lot of that in California. I can't speak state to state, but check it out. Yeah. And we can list some other resources, you know, on your website for sure, and tap into your the wisdom in your large room and talent base to get people steered towards that. And it's really about not panicking, not making a panic or fearful decision, and particularly the deciders or the leadership making that sound long-term decision, particularly culturally around leaders of volunteers, volunteer directors of services, volunteer managers. If they're fortunate enough to be on the leadership team or executive committee of their agency, fantastic. If not, again, I invite any executive directors, general managers, CEOs, board members, absolutely bring those staff members or team members into the conversation. There's a lot of volunteer-only, volunteer-run organizations out there that kind of have no budget, and it's hard for them to meet in person. But if a agency or an organization or entity, you know, has paid staff, and people need to be furloughed, it is a really bad look to cut from the bottom. You know, have executive leadership take the 20 to 30 to 40% pay cut. Have some office or executive people who can work from home do that, or take some time off, or whatever the case may be. And that's going to, again, kind of reinforce a better culture of comfort, convenience, connection, to see that the people who are genuinely on the front lines doing the work for the agency are the volunteers and the managers of those programs. And they're also the agency's best advertisements, best advocates, voters for if there's something coming up. I've worked a lot with government agencies, so we can never tell people how to vote, but there's a lot of things that get on the ballot for funding or priorities that can deeply impact the work of a conservation agency, of a human services agency, of a food security agency. And to keep that engagement going in whatever way you can, with virtual opportunities, with clear, correct information and transparency as soon as you get it. So under the C of connection, we think about, again, trust, bringing that back around, and togetherness, that we're all in this together. It's not we protect our staff and then we cut off our volunteers, or we cut the position temporarily, or we furlough the position of the volunteer engagement person. I'm seeing some great examples of colleagues who are directors of volunteer services who are brought into these larger strategic decisions. You know, they've got typically the most headcount in the agency. So not just that the volunteers are on the front lines that the clients know, they're the face of the agency, they're advocates, they're ambassadors. So any strategic decision that hurts that morale is going to be so much more damaging to the agency in the long run.
Sure.
We know that the return on investment, the literal return on investment for investing in volunteer services is, and I'll have to look it up. I think it might have been, there's a couple of studies. There's a Labor Department study, and I believe there is a Fidelity charitable study, but I'll try to look those up and email you those exact references. But the return on investment for an agency spending on their volunteer services and resources is really at least, you know, $3 to $5 for every dollar that you put into it. Not just because there's an inherent value measured by an organization called Independent Sector of an average value of unpaid work of volunteer services, and it tends to be, you know, considerably more than the minimum wage. In California, I think it's almost $30 an hour is the average value, and it's about $25 an hour average nationally as of, I think, 2019. But again, the priceless value of a happy volunteer out in the community, keeping, to get cynical or crass about it, the brand of your agency alive and relevant.
Yeah, yeah.
Hugely important, hugely important. If they see that their programs are getting cut, or the staff member that they're very attached to as their boss or their supervisor or their team member is cut or furloughed, you've probably lost that trust and that sense of we're in this together. And that's going to be hard to repair. There aren't going to be, you know, exactly that number of brand new people interested in doing this. There's always a little bit, you know, there's a life cycle, there's turnover, but that sense of connection is even more important in a crisis, that you are all in this together and that people's help can be accepted, whatever it may be, in new ideas and new roles and new opportunities. And that strategically the agency is keeping the idea of their unpaid team members or talent pool in the core of their strategies of success going forward. And that's, I don't know, a lot of executives get really tone deaf around that if they haven't come up through development or volunteer services, if they've come into their business leadership from another path. And I also want to mention that most of the time, especially nonprofits, not always in government agencies, board members are also volunteers.
Sure.
And volunteer isn't a job title, it's a pay category. So ideally, your agency has a good volunteer management software system or a database that includes any other skills that somebody has in addition to their role that they might be doing. So a great example is someone who's chopping onions at Project Open Hand food charity in San Francisco could be a marketing maven for a big tech company, could be a neurosurgeon, could be, you know, somebody who's like, I'm in the ER the rest of the time, but this is my zen to get away from that stress. So it's a really mutually beneficial relationship to start to ask. And if you don't have that information, hey, this is a great time to say, what other skills do you have? Do you have extra language skills? Can you help us translate things for the community and reach deeper and get a deeper engagement with the rest of the community? So your neighbors and the clients that we serve are not as scared and insecure and frightened or uncertain as to what's going on. They know that we're here as an agency. There's been a fantastic collaboration here in San Francisco between Shanti and the city of San Francisco and a number of other smaller nonprofits. Shanti typically does at-home, homebound care and respite for, it started off as just AIDS, HIV in I think the 80s, but it's really any homebound critical illness, homebound elderly program. And they have a fantastic model that has been replicated across the country, but the partnership between the city of San Francisco and Shanti, who hadn't really partnered before. So we're seeing these, that's the other opportunity we have in these times, is really, what are some new ways that we can merge our resources and cooperate and collaborate and not compete? You know, we're not competing for clients. We're not competing for grants anymore. We must collaborate and cooperate, not only to fulfill our mission to our clients, to our constituents, to the community, whatever that may be, whatever your agency is doing, but that partnership is going to make the entire sector of nonprofit or government services stronger on the other side. So it's not going to stop with the end of sheltering in place or people not being able to get food because they're out of work, they're furloughed, they're laid off, whatever the case may be. but that's now a partnership that's really going to strengthen both the city's services and Shanti, and there's other, I think it's called Oakland Cares. There's a number of other nonprofits in the Bay Area that are coming together that have done maybe individual or more siloed food delivery, meal delivery, and they're really coordinating their efforts to make sure that this whole new population of people requiring food and services and sustenance is supported in these really uncertain times. Any questions from you, Scott? I've been rambling for quite a while.
Yeah, no, it's been great. A lot of great
it's kind
resources.
Of the point.
Yeah, a lot of great resources. But it's interesting as I've watched some documentaries now about the 1917, 18, 19 Spanish flu and with the lessons we've learned from it. And the one example they love, all the these people, these historians love to give is this World War I bond event in Philadelphia. 200,000 volunteers came to support the war and raise money for the United States efforts in World War I. And yet this was a major point where there's a huge infection based off this one event. And so to me, it's almost like we've got this great example of people trying to do, volunteers trying to do something good to support their country and an effort, but there was this negative result from it.
Right.
And so it almost, to me, is a lesson for volunteers not to do anything during this period of time. So how can we overcome that? How can we overcome maybe the fear that some volunteers might have by putting themselves in a new situation where they don't have control? And how can we get beyond that? How can we, again, use our volunteers, but in maybe some ways where they're not going to have frontline interaction with other people?
Yeah, Scott, that's a great comparison. And that data, that study from 1918, and it's between St. Louis that did immediate quarantining at home and social distancing. It's called a quarantine, stay at home, let the milkman come to you. And Philadelphia that continued with this bond, with this kind of parade and this large community event that had a really severe spike in infections. I mean, again, the main thing is every interaction we have with a volunteer is an invitation to stay or an invitation to go. And we also really need to respect and, again, have grace and patience for, I don't feel safe doing that. So it becomes our jobs as leaders of volunteers in agencies, government agencies, again, nonprofit, or even on the corporate employee volunteering side, which is the kind of the other side of the coin of this. You never want to send people into something that they don't understand. So it's really about setting and meeting expectations, saying this opportunity in a food bank warehouse exists. Here are how we're keeping you safe. We're going above and beyond the minimally recommended CDC or local or state health agency measures. We are providing masks or providing gloves. You're standing 10 feet apart, where we have, alcohol wipes, wipe downs. But what's happening is, a lot of agencies are, particularly food banks, tend to be so strapped for cash all the time that they may not have those safety measures in place.
Right.
So that's a reality right now, is where there's a shortage of protective, personal protective equipment, PPEs. You see that all the time. But what we can do is, in California, volunteers, CalVols has a great safety poster around this, and my buddy Josh Friday, who's the officer for Cal Volunteers, we've been in touch, he's really doing a great job of not only communicating, you get to choose how you feel safe, and your health, and your body, so we trust you that what makes you feel safe. Here are the measures we're taking. And that's all we can do. It's really up to everybody to self-select, to have that agency, to have that choice. And even making the choice that I don't feel safe in this role anymore, but here's what else I can do. Again, that's covering the 3 C's: comfort, convenience, and connection. If an agency has the resources to offer personal protective equipment, and they have policies in place to take temperatures, those little temperature laser things everyone's suddenly buying up. Temperature takers, making sure that any paid or unpaid team members, again, full-time, part-time, that everybody's being treated the same way, everyone's getting the same information, everyone's getting the same consistent care and comfort, and that it's not just, again, this otherness of volunteers of, oh, the volunteers are the only ones who have to have their temperature checked or have to wear a mask or have to stay 10 feet apart, and staff are running around doing whatever they want. That doesn't help. The germs don't care. So everyone has to be kind of under the same measures, and just stating that very, very clearly as the roles are going out. The other role that I have as far as kind of marketing language or communication and keeping up this sense of trust in uncertain times is, and I see this broken all the time, and I try to get the word out, but never say need. It seems counterintuitive. I really urge people not to just stop using the word need. Because it has this unconscious bias, negative reaction that somebody is joining a sinking ship or something that's in such desperate straits that they're begging, and we're in urgent times. That could very well be the case, but unconsciously, psychologically, people are like, once in a while that hits somebody who is like, aha, I really respond to that. But that's a pretty small percentage. It's much stronger engagement language to say, join our team, support your neighbors. You can use the H word. You can use help, help your neighbors, join your community, support our mission by. And then the other big marketing, very common marketing mistake I see is people just saying, we need volunteers. It's like everything about that statement is a turnoff, because what's the actual job? So say, join our team of grocery shoppers, join our team of meal delivery, join our team of kitten foster families, join, this specific job title. So again, I made this point earlier, volunteer it's a pay category. It's not a job title. So what is the specific job title of the role? And we want to design these roles and these invitations for people to participate so that as many people as possible can do it. Volunteer engagement is really the opposite or inverse of HR practices. In HR, you have one position that a bunch of people are eliminated from and whittled down to just one person doing that job or that role. And volunteer engagement and program management, we want to design a role that as many people as possible can do. Absolutely as many people as possible can fit into that role, whether it's very, very high specific skills like an IT thing or a marketing thing or coaching on public speaking, whatever that specific skill is, or specific emergency response or disaster response strategy skill, all the way to a neurosurgeon is chopping onions just to have a break and to do something zen and low stakes with their time to kind of for their own stress relief.
And do you think that now that people might not have a commute because they're working from home, or now that young people are being schooled at home, that now there's more time to volunteer for nonprofits, for some of these volunteers? They have more time on their plate?
So a few people do, but the reality that has come to pass is, I don't have human children, but I have a 6-month-old puppy and I have a cat, and I specifically had the puppy go out with a dog walker today to not interfere with this and other calls I have. And parents with children, not just fur babies, are finding that they're their teacher. They're trying to do their remote job. They're being a full-time parent. We just watched Jimmy Fallon's, 2 or 3-year-old toddler climb all over him during the live taping of his show, and they left it in. And for my friends who are teachers as their profession, and they have children, and now they're at home teaching other people's kids and managing their own kids, they don't have a minute of time. And again, that comes back to the idea of grace and patience, that it's absolutely fine. Don't let it hurt your relationship with any individual volunteer, or even a corporate relationship with a corporate team that you're used to seeing every Friday at your agency to, fold clothes for the thrift shop, whatever the case may be. Don't harm that relationship and be mad at people because they need to do other things right now. It's that grace and that patience. And this is also a really great time this is kind of a larger strategic move to make, is cross-train your staff, not just cross-train your unpaid team members if you can, and offer them new opportunities. We talked about that kind of any special project umbrella. Anything can happen. Give us an idea. What ideas do you have? Here's what we think are some tasks, new roles that can be done on our team now. And again, frame it with, we don't need volunteers, or you're joining a team with a specific job title and a specific role description that you can filter. Oh, I have those skills. That's my secret superpower. Great, I can do that. But it's really helpful right now for other departments and other staff members to understand volunteer engagement, not just those 3 C's. And you can explain it, on a sticky note, or say, hey, we run our culture with the 3 C's of happy volunteers: comfort, convenience, connection. Okay, great, go. Train them on the nuts and bolts of the program. That's going to have a deeper understanding in that long run, and a deeper impact on the culture of the agency, where including leadership, if they're starting to do some of the tasks that previous in-person volunteers did, if they're starting to cross-train in those, that's going to have a great impact on empathy and understanding of the importance of these roles and tasks when we're back to a new normal. There isn't going to be an old normal. We're going to have to adjust to something completely new.
Excellent.
You still there, Scott? I got a little freeze.
Yeah. I'm here. I'm
okay,
here.
good.
Yeah,
yeah.
and we got all that. So we're almost out of time. So and this has been fantastic. Great resources, great concepts for us to follow. I really appreciate this. Are there any kind of last minute tips or anything else you wanted to share with us, or any resources that we haven't covered that you'd like to cover with us before we go?
Absolutely. Yeah, and again, Volunteer Match, Alive, Association of Leaders in Volunteer Engagement, which is our professional organization, and I was on that board for 6 years, their past president. Point of Light, Volunteer Pro, all of the kind of major companies, a lot of the software companies, we're all coming together behind the scenes to point resources in one-stop shopping. And that 2 places that are one-stop shopping right now is volunteermatch.org, and they have a COVID-19 resources hub. So if you go to volunteermatch.org, you can see that, or you can go volunteermatch.org / COVID-19 resources hub. And the website I mentioned a couple of times previously, energizeinc.com, which was founded by essentially the grandmother of the sector, Susan Ellis. And my friend Betsy McFarland, who's helping run Susan Ellis Foundation, she's really doing a wonderful job, and her staff at Energize Inc. are doing a wonderful job. Just everything you could need. And it's down on the COVID-19 resources by sector. So animal care, health, food insecurity, faith, whatever kind of the subsectors within volunteer engagement are, there's specific resources, and then a lot of general resources. And again, hopefully some people watching are already members of Alive, Association of Leaders in Volunteer Engagement. And as a professional network, they're doing tons of free webinars, other live Facebook chats, usually once every week or 2 to get, I've been doing a bunch of those as well, caught up on stuff. But we're here for you, and really keep in mind that you're not in a silo, you're not isolated. We're all going through this together, and practicing grace and patience with each other will go a long way. And if you feel overwhelmed, or you don't know what to do, seriously, pop over to energizeinc.com or volunteermatch.org and just go through the resources. And I also invite people, just email me directly, dana@danalitwin.com. If you have any questions about this, and I can point you in directions of resources and great books like Virtual Volunteering as they come out.
Fantastic. This is great, and we'd love to continue our conversation with you down the road as we try to tackle these issues. But I really appreciate your time and spending it with us today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Scott, so much for having me, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon, and be well.
Thanks. You too. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.